This is Kaya. Kaya. Hey everybody, Casey Maxwell here. This is the going to be the question for the day that I received recently. So the question is about the different types of channeling that I do. And I'm going to simplify it as much as possible and probably go into more detail in some videos later. But the channeling that I do comes in many forms, and let me just rattle off a few. So, as a medium, I do channel spirits on the other side, and there is a whole other realm and spectrum of paranormal activity type of stuff and spirit talk, so to speak, that I can go down this rabbit hole with in another video. But I do channel things as a medium with spirits on the other side. I've also channeled the spirits of young children that are waiting to find new bodies as their spirits have evolved and are getting more back into this type of innocent essence that starts to, it has a different buzz. There's a different vibration associated with when I'm channeling a spirit on the other side that is in either this place of stuckness or has already moved to a higher vibrational plane of existence and comes back as a guardian and chooses to stay with the family. Then there's the ones that continue in a written story to be reborn or reincarnated into a new body, and they still have the consciousness of themselves from their previous physical body and life, and is slowly shifting into a new level of consciousness upon being reborn into the child's body. Also, I channel things in my dreams a lot. I channel other types of beings and other planes of existences, other different forms of consciousness, and that can be a very broad spectrum and another topic that I can go down the rabbit hole with in a later video. I channel things in a lot of different ways psychically, whether it's not just a spirit or another entity or being in another plane of existence, but through empathetic ability, through levels of sensitivity that I feel in my physical body and my emotional body, and in that kind of spiritual realm. Fairy creatures, other type of interdimensional beings, I also channel a lot of, and can tell when there's certain entities attached to people or certain fae type of creatures that are congregated and are part of the essence of people and their own personal and unique journey. And it's funny how those beings are different types of characteristics and mannerisms and all different types of things attached to that person and unique to their own self. When it comes to the types of dreams that I have, a good example would be actually a video that I want to make soon with a really good friend and soul sister of mine. I had a dream about this person 3 days before I met her. And the beauty of the clarity that I had in this dream was so real and vibrant for me that I was able to take the symbols that were in this dream, as well as the symbolic visual of what this person's physical appearance would be like, and draw it in one of my vision sketchbooks. A day later, I got a phone call from one of my Reiki masters, and she had connected me with another student of hers that was really searching out information that she was getting from personal psychic downloads, stuff associated with the Anunnaki and Egypt and extraterrestrial beings, and this whole gateway that kind of opened up within her. And my Reiki master had felt that this was something along the lines of the work that I do and had connected us. Upon driving to this person's house 3 days later, I had this knowing in my heart that I was going to meet the person that was in my dream. My dream was also very intimate, very symbolic of a type of union taking place, and I was very already overly protective and cautious and loving of this person. There was a really strong familiarity, and I had got that from that dream. As well, that strong knowing made me become even more and more aware that I was in alignment with the right path of meeting this person, and it was going to feel like family. And I'm very grateful for that. And when I met this person 3 days later, she was the person in my dream. She became a client of mine, and we started doing some sessions together. I think it was our second or third session together. I got to a place of comfortability enough to share my vision sketchbook with her and allow her to flip through the pages until she came across the page of her own personal drawing. And it was that kind of shocking dead silence where you're unsure of how someone's going to react, if it was like crossing a boundary line or if it was very eye-opening. And I was really grateful for her reaction because you could tell that she knew, and I had made comments about it before, but upon her flipping through and finding the page and finding herself, and was a lot of confirmation that we were on the right path to finding each other. And from there, she became a very dear soul sister of mine, and we made a lot of karmic connections and soul connections to who we are to one another, which I'm very grateful for. And as well, I did vision quest sessions with her, and between my guides and her guides, and that soul and karmic connection that we have, there were things that I had visions about and dreamed about, 5 years ago from that experience that she started to experience in her dream and in her vision quest as well. So it became a whole layout of synchronicities and personal experiences between both of us that just confirmed so much of our connection and our relationship, which for both of us made the work that we do feel so much more in alignment and so much more powerful. I will make more in-depth videos about that later with her, so you guys can tap into that energy and see the intimate connection that we share. As well, I tap into what would be considered the Akashic records. So there's sometimes when people want me to do the medium work that I'm connecting with an actual spirit, or I'm just referencing information from things that have been stored in those records and other spiritual planes of existence. And sometimes it can be hard to differentiate between that, and also because when you open yourself up to connecting with source and spirits and those other planes of existence, a lot of information can come through at once. Sometimes I will tap into 2 or 3 spirits at the same time, and we'll have this overlap where 3 of them almost become one person, where I'm putting a lot of different physical representations together, and I'll have to use my pendulum or crystals or some things to kind of differentiate between these, the information that I'm receiving, as well as details. I have to really clear my mind and be still and just allow information to come to me. There's experiences I've had with the medium work where I could be at work with a friend or sitting with a complete stranger and in no way be intentionally opened up to channeling or receiving information, but get this very strong pressure. And that's the best way that I can explain it, because the information starts coming to me mentally, and the pressures from the spirit kind of weighing in my auric field and pushing and affecting my physical body, where I feel their need to communicate what needs to be heard or to make a connection with someone, because there is that desire that they realize you can channel, and they want to utilize that time and really initiate that experience. There's a lot of different forms of differentiating between those types of experiences and having really good discernment about what is a real spirit, what is a lower vibrational entity, what is an angelic being, what is a fairy being, what is another spirit being reborn. Another example of channeling with a good friend of mine, I kept seeing this little girl in a white dress, and I kept telling her and initiating that I kept seeing this little girl in a white dress, but that she was very strongly connected to this specific grandmother. And she was like, okay, very open to receiving the information. She's like, but I don't understand where this little girl is coming from. And I appreciate the other people that you've already channeled, like her mother and her uncle and a few other people, but I'm not sure about this little girl. And I'm like, okay, well, we can move on, and we'll just leave it at that. Sometimes spirits, come through in many different ways. And it was one of my first times experiencing a spirit communicating with me and me channeling an energy that wasn't completely passed on into this other plane of existence yet. That was on the in-between of transition. And after, once again, I said, this little girl keeps coming through to me in this white nightgown, and it is somehow really associated to this specific grandmother, and I don't have much more detail past that. And then this awe moment happened for her, and the emotion on her face was priceless for me, because you could tell something had clicked. Well, her great-grandmother was on her deathbed, so to speak, was in transition, and she wasn't very coherent in communications and conversations past the point of kind of repeating this story to family and the nurses about her being when she was a little girl and wearing one of her favorite white dresses. And there are a few other details associated with that, but the gist of the story was I was connecting with her grandmother, transitioning, and her grandmother's spirit was projecting itself as the young child version of herself wearing her favorite white dress. In relation to the channeling question, someone was asking about channeling famous people or historical people that have passed on. A form of channeling I've done for myself was connecting with past lives, and I'll go down the rabbit hole with videos later about my own personal past life experiences. But I've also had dreams of where Einstein has come to me. I've had connections with, let's see, who else? Well, the Einstein dream was interesting because there was a hamster that my friend had when I was young that had passed away like maybe 2 weeks later after we had played with it. And I think as a child, when you're playing with something at a young age, and even though you're not being like really rough, there was like this guilt that I had about this hamster. Like, oh, I wonder if I did something wrong. It was so small. Did we play with it too rough? We shouldn't have rolled it around in that little ball, or whatever the case was. And it was like I had this dream where Einstein came to me, and he was like, he had the hamster in his hand, and he was like, it's okay. Like I'm doing tests on it, or like it has a purpose. There's a purpose, and I felt that, knowing that there was a purpose. And I've also seen a lot of different algorithms and equations and things come into my mind where I resonate on a vibration and a feeling of understanding what they mean, even if I can't compute it to actual like reality in terms, now, like here, the way that the math equation might be presented. So that was fascinating. Let's see. I've had a lot of dreams about famous people that haven't even passed on, whether I've referenced them for symbolic purposes or am some reason channeling something that they're going through. It's interesting that most of my clients are people I find in passing or who have reached out through social media. But I've had random dreams of people like Alexander Skarsgård. I've had random dreams of him, like catching him in acting scenes or being at big mansions with, these large private parties with kind of actors and actresses everywhere, just wandering around, enjoying the hot tubs, just random kind of things. And that's been fascinating to like associate it with not knowing that you can't communicate with this specific person or apply how it might help them in their life. So you start trying to apply it to how it could affect yours, or the meaning that it has to what you're going through in your life, the symbolism behind it. There's been quite a few people that have passed. It's overwhelming. The moment I start talking about channeling, I start channeling, and that they get excited. Spirits want to talk. They want us to know that there's so much more past, the limitations that we put on this reality. And I think having these types of gifts and abilities is a huge reason I became inspired to share stories and share information, because for me it's my truth, and a lot of other people experience it as their truth, but that doesn't mean that the collective world as a whole believes in those things and might perceive it differently. I did make a video a couple years ago, if you search back through, about some of my personal experiences as a psychic medium, and there was a lot of upbringing, religious upbringing that I experienced that very much judges what I do or is very easily misunderstood. And for me, in that way, it's really difficult sometimes to know how to reconnect with certain family members and be accepted, because we don't necessarily have the same beliefs. But then again, I cannot deny what is my own reality, but that doesn't mean that I'm possessed by the devil either. So if you guys are struggling with anything like that, you're starting to channel things, your abilities are awakening, you're not feeling supported by family or the community, or you're dealing with depression, please feel free to reach out and ask more questions, and I'll tune in with another daily video. If there was anything specific in this video that you want me to go down the rabbit hole with, please ask, because I could just talk about it for hours.